What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Crush City Territory. I'm Chandler Rome, joined by Tyler Stafford and a very special guest, a long-suffering fan of the New York Giants, an international traveler, and perhaps the most renowned broadcaster to graduate from Syracuse University, Astros play-by-play man, Robert Ford. Robert, a belated happy Thanksgiving to you. How are you?
Happy Thanksgiving. And considering the Giants have won 4 Super Bowls and been to 5 in my lifetime, I don't know that I'm really suffering all that much.
Long-suffering Syracuse football fan. How about that?
Well, that's a little more accurate.
Yeah, it is. Appreciate you coming on, Robert. We'll hit on a lot of stuff today because we're in that weird kind of dead period right now with the offseason because the winter meetings are coming up, so everyone's kind of readying themselves for that. But the holidays just happened, and unless you're the Toronto Blue Jays and you don't celebrate Thanksgiving and you got a bunch of gate revenue from the World Series, you don't do many moves around Thanksgiving, aside from the Toronto Blue Jays, who have agreed to give Dylan Cease $210 million across 7 seasons. Tyler, that was a funny little week when it was being talked about that the Astros were going to be really in on Dylan Cease and that the Astros were going to make a real run at Dylan Cease as a starting pitching target.
Yeah, I don't know if I have been around Astros Twitter long enough that I just follow the smart people. And I didn't even know that any Astros fans thought that that was a possibility because I would not have guessed that at all. So when the signing came out and everybody was all upset, I was like, what do you guys, when did you think the Astros are going to give Dylan Cease all of this money? So I don't know. Were people in your mentions thinking that that was imminent?
Well, I'm going to tie a bunch of thoughts together here because there was one piece of news that I think we can talk about that maybe relates to this. I think it's well known that the Astros tried very hard to acquire Dylan Cease at the trade deadline, to the point where there was a deal. I don't want to say it was on the 1-yard line, but it was maybe around the 15 or the 10-yard line, and they were going in the score, and then they acted like the Aggies, and it just didn't. They did not get into the end zone. Now, usually when you have interest in someone at the trade deadline, that interest does not wane. You're still interested in the player, but I think anyone that has followed the Astros for a substantial length of time understands that they do not, that they don't do long-term deals. They don't do anything. Jim Crane has been very reluctant to go over 6 years to any free agent. He's never guaranteed a pitcher more than $95 million in a free agent contract. He's never guaranteed a starting pitcher more than $85 million in any contract period. But the one thing that gave Astros fans a little bit of hope, I think, was earlier in that day, before it had come out that the Blue Jays had come to terms with Dylan Cease, the Astros announced the rest of their major league coaching staff. And to replace Bill Murphy, the assistant pitching coach who left for the Pirates, the Astros hired a guy named Ethan Katz. And Ethan Katz was the pitching coach for the Chicago White Sox for the last 4 seasons. He is very, very well regarded within the league. The White Sox have not been, let's say, the model team the last 4 or 5 years for a lot of different reasons. Tony La Russa and Pedro Grifol, for very different reasons, did not do well there. But the one thing that they have done, even with those 2 guys, is they pitched it very well. And Ethan Katz formed a rapport with Dylan Cease while he was with the White Sox. Dylan Cease finished runner-up in Cy Young voting one of those years while Ethan Katz was mentoring him, with coaching him. They have a good relationship. I think a lot of people saw that hire and thought, oh, like that could give the Astros a leg up. That could certainly make some sense. I think it would have certainly been a feather in their cap had they offered anything close in the ballpark that the Blue Jays did, but that was not going to happen. Robert, bring you in here. You have contacts around the league. You study this a lot. Ethan Katz is, and I don't want to make a ton out of an assistant pitching coach hire, but it's what we have at this point. He's very well regarded. And I think this was, again, I'm not trying to fall over myself about an assistant pitching coach, but I think it's a really good hire for the Astros, especially to pair him with Josh Miller, a guy that knows really what he's doing. And Ethan Katz is a guy that has very, very long been hailed in baseball circles as an innovative pitching mind.
Yeah, I'm curious as to how it all kind of shakes out, and I think it's very interesting because you would think, like you said, Ethan Katz very highly regarded. You would think that he was a candidate, or would have been a candidate for all the various pitching coach openings around Major League Baseball. And here he is coming to the Astros. Now, there's always a lot about that stuff that we don't always know. In terms of how much interest he has or other teams have in him. But considering what he did with the White Sox and just how well thought of he is in the industry, you would think that there were at least conversations with somebody, with Ethan Katz, with one team or another, about him being their lead pitching coach. So I think it's interesting that he wound up as an assistant pitching coach with the Astros. And I would imagine that he and Josh Miller obviously had conversations, and I would think that the Astros aren't going to hire an assistant pitching coach without getting some input from Josh Miller. So obviously they feel like this is something that's going to be beneficial to them and to the Astros pitchers. Obviously Josh and Ethan both feel like they can work well together, and that, I always think it's important to have kind of a pecking order when it comes to stuff like this. And so, there's a clear pecking order, and maybe it's just a springboard for Ethan Katz for a short period of time before he winds up in the lead pitching coach job somewhere else, but he can still have an impact, even if it's just a season or 2 seasons with the Astros. So yeah, I'm really curious to get to know Ethan. I've never spoken with him. I've never had a conversation with him, just to kind of hear some of his philosophies and some of what he thinks. I'm also curious because Bill Murphy was in the bullpen during games. Is Ethan Katz going to be in the bullpen during games as well? These are all things obviously we'll figure out as we get closer to spring training and all of that. But yeah, when I saw the coaching staff announcement, I was surprised to see Ethan Katz was our assistant pitching coach, but also elated to see that. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that shakes out and what Ethan Katz can bring to the table.
I can tell you this, that Josh Miller was involved in the interview process.
I would think so.
He spoke to numerous candidates, and Josh wasn't maybe doing the interviewing. Obviously, this is Joe Espada. He's the manager. He makes the final decisions, but he brought Josh in and consulted with Josh. Josh sat in on some interviews virtually. So make no mistake, Josh was very much involved in this situation. And I think that's an interesting point, Robert, but I also wonder too, just how much of maybe, us three know it better than maybe anybody, that the Astros are so renowned in their pitching and how they develop pitching, how they think about pitching, how they make pitchers better. This could be a situation where Ethan Katz probably, he did not have a job. It should be noted that too, that Will Venable, the manager of the White Sox, decided, in his second year, he wanted to bring in maybe some more of his guys. So Ethan Katz was let go from the White Sox. So he did need a job. And maybe it's one of these things where, the Astros' reputation, precedes them in terms of pitching development, in terms of how they talk about pitching and everything they do analytically and how they are innovative in that area. I wonder if Ethan Katz is just intrigued to just be around it, to just to see what it's like, to see what their secret sauce is here that maybe he can take and springboard into his next job.
Yeah, that crossed my mind too. Because I would think, and then we hear it, and I know you know this too, Chandler, when pitchers sign with the Astros from other organizations, you often hear them talk about, I'm really excited to see what the Astros can teach me because of the reputation that the Astros have had over the last decade or so in terms of working with pitchers and developing pitchers and making them better. And I think you could potentially apply the same to other pitching coaches wanting to know what the Astros do and learning from the Astros.
And the thing that made Ethan Katz the thing that maybe put him on the map a little bit is his where he started and how he started. He was a high school pitching coach when he began this entire odyssey he is on. His high school team included Jack Flaherty, Max Fried, and Lucas Giolito, who I believe now we can get to a point where I think Ethan Katz's presence on the Astros maybe makes a difference in a free agent negotiation. To me, Lucas Giolito profiles as the type of arm, the type of pitcher that the Astros should be after. He does not have a qualifying offer attached to him. This last season was his first off of surgery, his first full season off of surgery. Still pitched pretty well when you look at everything. He had some clunkers every now and then, but threw about 150 innings, had an ERA around 4, which is what this team is going to need. He's not going to require 7 years and $200 million. You're probably looking at a 2 or 3 year deal, maybe around 50 to 70 million around total value. Again, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to money. It's going to come down to who offers him the most money, who offers him the most years. It's going to be who offers him the best contract. But Tyler, I think having Ethan Katz in the fold, I think is certainly something that you could say, hey, like Lucas Giolito now becomes like an intriguing and realistic target for the Astros.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, as we've talked about ad nauseum here, the Astros need an adult who can get 5 innings, every 5th day. And Lucas Giolito has done that for a long time in the big leagues. My first thought, this is off topic, but Lucas Giolito is really the only other person that I can think. I know there's a million others, but with the real short arm slot, that he throws with, he almost kind of short arms the ball. And we saw Fromber have a lot of success with that. And then Luis Garcia, before he got re-injured last year, had also kind of switched to that short arm slot. So, that would be interesting too, to see if throughout the pitching development, if there's something to that, or, what that is. But I don't know. There's probably other guys that you guys could think of, but Lucas Giolito is always the first one that I think of with that real short arm slot.
And he's a gamer too, man. Mm-hmm. When you watch Lucas Giolito pitch, he's always been just I have seen him pitch very well against the Astros. I have seen him, pitch. To me, Robert, I think we can all agree here, and Dana Brown has said this outright. Like, their foremost priority this winter is starting pitching, because they're going like Fromber Valdez. By the way, did anyone have a better weekend than Fromber Valdez after Dylan Cease got $210 million? That's going to set the market, and Fromber will get something that probably starts with a 2 now. So good for him. But it's pretty clear that the Astros' obvious need this winter has been pitching and starting pitching. I think given their druthers, I think they'd want to do that via trade, given kind of where their financial situation is, where their payroll is. I think they would rather do it via trade, but I think this is a team that needs multiple starting pitchers. And Robert, I think they could do a lot worse than Lucas Giolito, especially maybe reuniting him with Ethan Katz.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think the other part of it too is, you look at what happened last year with the Astros pitching. Now it was, you could argue it was a historic run of injuries. I mean, you have 2 starters in your opening day rotation, have Tommy John surgery within a few weeks of each other. It's stuff that just, generally doesn't happen at the volume that it happened to the Astros in terms of just all the pitcher injuries they had, particularly to their rotation. So I think, and Dana Brown, like every general manager, talks about the importance of starting pitching depth, and Dana Brown is no exception in that regard. And so I think, especially when you come off a year like the Astros had in 2025 with all the injuries to pitching, it becomes even a more of an urgent need for this ball club to just make sure you cover all your bases and you have as much depth as you possibly could. And I mean, just think about where the Astros would be if guys like Brandon Walter and Jason Alexander hadn't emerged last year. I mean, those guys kept them afloat, and they basically came out of nowhere. And I think the Astros feel like they have a lot of really quality starting pitching prospects, but you never know how that's going to pan out. You never know who's going to rise to the top and all of those things. So, yeah, you would like to have some established arms in the rotation, some guys that you have a better idea of what you can expect, especially when you consider, Spencer Arrighetti. He's going to be in the opening day rotation, but obviously he didn't pitch a lot last year because of his IL time. You have other guys, obviously Hayden Wesneski will be back at some point. Ronel Blanco could be back at some point from Tommy John surgery, but that's going to be later in the year. So you're going to need to fill innings. And you want to fill those not just with quantity, but quality as well. And I think certainly Giolito's an option. And I think, all the moves, I'm sure you guys have covered it on this podcast, all the moves the Astros made, trading Mauricio Dubon, not bringing back Chas McCormick, all ways to just kind of reset their payroll and get themselves under that luxury tax threshold to a point where maybe they could make a run at a pitcher or two out there in free agency. In addition to, as you mentioned, trying to acquire some guys via trade.
I'm tired of you people forgetting about ALCS Game 4 starter AJ Blueball when we're talking about the starting rotation. I will not.
But again,
but
that's another example. Like, he was really good, but he's AJ's an unknown. He hasn't started for a full season. His most successful run came out of the bullpen. I mean, in some bulk outings in some cases, but so yeah, there's a lot of question marks when it comes to the Astros rotation. Was it Colton Gordon threw the second most innings on the team or something like that?
Yeah. Now that Fromber's gone, because they obviously Hunter Brown and Fromber both threw 190, around 180, 190, and then it was Ryan Gusto threw the third most innings. He got traded, and then it was Colton Gordon. So. Yeah, they've got some innings to fill. And I think, Robert, as you said, hope is not a solution, I think, as we saw this past year as well. So hoping that Hayden Wesneski and Ronel Blanco come back at some point in the second half and are effective. The Astros tried that when they did not acquire Dylan Cease at the deadline, and it did not go particularly well. Just like, hoping that AJ Blueball can do something, hoping that Miguel Ulloa is maybe the guy that they think he can be. It'd be great if all that happens, and the Astros would love it if all that happens, but that cannot be their only plan. Like, hope is not the plan, and that cannot be their plan. That's why they are going to spend most of the upcoming winter meetings scouring the free agent market, scouring the trade market for as much starting pitching as possible. We'll keep talking about the Astros' pursuits at the winter meetings and the offseason right after this message from our friends at Foul Territory.
If you are still carrying a clunky leather brick that can be mistaken for an old school wallet, may I introduce you to what Eric Kratz is getting himself for the holidays?
I mean, this is the greatest wallet that I've ever seen in my life. Your credit cards fit in here. It's adjustable, lifetime guaranteed. Like this is a must-have for the holidays. Absolute must-have.
Ridge Olive Matte. That is the design that Kratz has right now, and you can get a hold of that. There's over 50 plus colors and styles to choose from over at Ridge. You can even get a wallet that features every NFL, MLB, or college team. And for a limited time, Ridge is having their huge Black Friday sale. Head to ridge.com/foul to get up to 47% off your order. This is by far the biggest discount they've given all year. That's ridge.com/foul for up to 47% off your order during their biggest sale of the year. After your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about Ridge. Tell them Foul Territory sent you.
Another fun thing about Lucas Giolito, if the Astros do go that route, I'm sure many people, if Lucas Giolito has pitched on a nationally televised game you've watched, you've heard this, but his grandfather is Warren Frost. And for those Seinfeld fanatics out there like Robert and I, Warren Frost stars in what I think, Robert, is one of the top 5 most memorable episodes of Seinfeld with the Cheever letters. It's titled The Cheever Letters. Warren Frost plays Susan Ross's father. Susan Ross is George Costanza's fiance. And Warren Frost plays her father, and something happens in the Cheever letters that I don't think we can get into on this podcast, but I'll let that hang for you guys to maybe go see for yourself. But that'd be a fun talking point for you on the radio, Robert, because I know you like to mix in as many pop culture references as possible, as many to keep the broadcast vibrant. I know you like those on the air.
I mean, I think I've probably mentioned it every time Lucas Giolito has started against the Astros, and his parents were both actors. That's how they met. Like, I think that stuff's fascinating. So, yeah, that would be cool. That would be an ancillary benefit if the Astros wind up picking up Lucas Giolito.
I'm glad to have this opportunity because I thought about you essentially every time Jason Alexander was mentioned. I mean, walk me through the first 5 minutes after you find out the Astros are getting a guy that just gives you carte blanche to make as many Seinfeld references as you want. How did that feel? What's going through your head when you see that transaction?
I mean, I wanted to drape myself in velvet. Is really how I felt about Jason Alexander coming over to the Astros. But yeah, it was fun every now and again to slip in a Seinfeld reference. On the air. And I had a conversation with Jason Alexander about Seinfeld later on in his Astros tenure. And
he doesn't watch the show.
Yeah, why would you?
Well, he said when he was growing up, because he was the youngest, he has older brothers, a couple of whom pitch professionally as well. And he said he told me he was like, I never had control over the TV, and so. They were always watching Seinfeld reruns, and this was in the era when pretty much whatever market you're in, you had a local TV station that played Seinfeld reruns, and they were on, TBS and all of that. And so he said, I saw more Seinfeld than I wanted. And I asked him, I said, how much, of the Seinfeld, lore do you understand? Or, the Jason Alexander, George Costanza connection. He said, some of the basic things, but not a huge Seinfeld fan. But the other thing he said to me, but he was like, I love it whenever I pitch and people on social media come at me with all this Seinfeld stuff. And he was like, keep it coming. That's what he said to me. He's like, keep it coming. Like, he loved it. So it was almost like I had gotten Jason Alexander's seal of approval to continue doing what I was already going to do, which is pepper his starts and the games he pitches with Seinfeld references.
Okay, so we mentioned Lucas Giolito and having fun and interesting parents. I've been very patient, Chandler. It's 22 minutes.
Go ahead.
Robert, I'm a musician, a producer. I've got, the record collection back here. I've got all my guitars and stuff, hanging up on this side over here. I have to ask you just some questions about your dad. For anyone who does not know, Robert's dad was a hip hop pioneer producer and, very, very important to the genre and music in general. I want to ask, I've read your essay. You talked about hanging out at Def Jam offices with your dad. Can you give one Beastie Boys story from hanging out with them at Def Jam?
I wish I had more, because during the time that my dad worked for Russell Simmons at Def Jam, and their offices at the time were in Soho, which now you think, if you know anything about New York City, about Manhattan, and then he was like, wow, that had to be pretty cool. It was really no, this was well before Soho was gentrified. I mean, there were crackheads across the street from Def Jam's offices. We're talking, mid to late 1980s. And I was in, second, third grade. So my dad would pick me up from school. We take the subway down, in the Bronx. We take the subway down to Soho and Manhattan. And I would sit in his office and do my homework. Well, people were coming into his office, and I really didn't pay much attention at that time. I was not really into music that much. But yeah, the Beastie Boys, LL Cool J, Run DMC all came into his office. I do remember having an interaction with Darryl McDaniel from Run DMC. One thing I can tell you about the Beastie Boys, my dad loved those guys. And not just because of their music, but my dad said they were the most polite guys. They were gentlemen. They called him Mr. Ford. My dad ate that stuff up, which is funny to think about if you know anything about the Beastie Boys. And, they kind of have this irreverent party image, especially back then, because they were only on Def Jam for their first album, License to Ill. But yeah, to know what we know about the Beastie Boys, and to hear my dad describe them as just perfect gentlemen and really nice guys, and just real menches, as we would say in New York, the Yiddish word for just good people. It's funny to kind of hear that. But yeah, my dad really liked those guys and thought they were just really good people in addition to good musicians.
Did he have sampling stuff set up in the home? Like, was he pulling out, drum break records and sampling stuff? What were you doing at home watching him do all that?
No, I mean, my dad, work was work for him. Like, he wasn't, like, my dad wasn't a musician. I mean, he was a record producer, and he was a songwriter, but he was never a musician himself. So my exposure to all that stuff was when he would take me, when he was working at Def Jam, or when he had to go into recording studios. That was really my exposure to just kind of that side of my dad's life and of his, what he did for a living. And I mean, I spent a lot of time in the recording studio, and, being in Texas, I'm sure people may remember there was an R&B group in the early 90s called High Five. And they were based mostly out of Waco, Texas. Most of the members are from Waco, Texas, including their lead singer, Tony Thompson. And I got to know those guys because they were always in the studio. They were just a little older than me. I was like a preteen at this point. And my dad, was like 91, 92, spent a good chunk of the year traveling to Waco, Texas quite a bit because they would record stuff down there. I never went with him to Texas. I hadn't been to Texas at that point in my life. But what I learned from my dad about Texas boiled down to three things. And if my dad were alive, he would tell you these three things right now. They love high school football, they love Whataburger, and everybody's packing. That's what I knew about Texas from my father, based on his time in Waco in the early 90s.
And he nailed it. He was a scout. He got it exactly right. Way to go, Dad.
He even went to a 6-man football game.
Oh yeah,
Waco while he was. That's how I had no idea I had no idea that was a thing until my dad
those
told me
rural
about that.
schools are out. I mean, they're still doing it. I'm in education sales, and so I visit a ton of very rural school districts. 130 kids, K-12, and yeah, man, they're playing 6-7-man football out there, just getting after it.
You good, Tyler?
I have more. I did. Okay, so it's November 30th as we record. Have you heard Curtis Blow's Christmas Rappin' yet, or is that going to hit like later this week? When does that hit the playlist for you?
That's a good question. I'm sure I'll hear it soon. I have not heard it yet, but I mean, it's different now because when I'm in the car, I'm mostly listening to Spotify. But I mean, I'm sure at some point, whether I put it in a playlist or I happen to have a playlist on that has it, yeah, it's only a matter of time. I always look forward to that day, and that'll be good. And with my dad having passed, more than 5 years ago, I do get some of his royalties now, so I'm looking forward to that part as well when I get to cash in on my dad's songwriting genius.
Hey, that's not bad right there.
You're one of the few people that looks forward to Christmas music beginning to play.
Not all Christmas music.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Not all. Christmas Rappin', Christmas in Hollis by Run DMC.
Mm-hmm.
The Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band's version of Santa Claus is Coming to Town, and Mariah Carey, All I Want for Christmas Is You.
Sure.
If I only hear those songs during the holiday season, I'm good. Everything else, I can take or leave.
I like Chance the Rapper's Christmas mixtape. If you haven't heard that, I don't even know if it's on Spotify. It might just be on SoundCloud, but that's a good one. If you're looking for new Christmas suggestions, I like that one.
I want it marked that this is the 128th episode of this baseball podcast, and that was the first time that Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band has been mentioned.
You might get kicked out of the Baseball Writers Association.
I might,
now.
honestly. I might. So we made it 127 episodes without talking about Bruce Springsteen in the East Street, which I like Bruce Springsteen. I'm not going to fall over myself to talk about him, but he's fine. He did well for himself. I need to go see the Jeremy Allen White movie to maybe learn more. Have you seen it?
I have not. I've heard good things. I do need to see it.
Yeah, I missed it in theater. I'm in theaters quite a bit, but I missed that one. I'm going to see Wicked tonight after this, so I'll let you know.
Hey,
how
by
that
the way,
goes.
quick music story. So I was in Australia and New Zealand for a couple of weeks. I got back about a week ago. Australia, I was in Sydney. They have the Sydney Harbour Bridge. You can do they call it a bridge climb. You get to walk to the top of the bridge. Great view, Sydney Harbour, Opera House, all that. Really cool. And they have pictures of all these celebrities who have done the Sydney Bridge climb. Everybody from Oprah Winfrey to Will Smith to Peyton Manning. I mean, it's like a who's who. So anyway, the guy who was leading our tour, he said that just last week, lead singer from Metallica, James Hetfield, had been on his tour. But he had no idea. He's like, I don't listen to Metallica. I had no idea who this guy was. So he said they're doing the tour, and he had talked to him. He's like, hey, what do you do? He's like, oh, I work in music. I'm in the band. He's like, oh, that's cool. And he didn't think anything of it. And he said at the end of the tour, he says to him, hey, by the way, good luck with your music career, man. Good luck with your band. And he said the guy looked at him like he was nuts. And then somebody came over and was like, hey, you know who that is, right? That's like the lead singer for Metallica. Yeah.
Did you pull up your Wikipedia page to show that you were a celebrity so you can get on the bridge?
No, although I did. So anybody who follows me on Instagram may know that I posted after I did that Sydney Harbour Bridge climb, and it's still on my Instagram. So they do this thing when you get up there. They take all these pictures because they don't let you bring your cell phone up there for obvious reasons, because you might drop it into the Sydney Harbour or something, or down on the traffic on the bridge. But the guides all have cameras and they take pictures and everything and videos. And so near the end of, once you get to the summit, you're up there for a while taking pictures. And near the end of that, they're like, hey, if you want to record a video, let us know. And, we'll record a video. So I did a video of me saying, see you later from the top of the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And so, so it's my turn to do the video. And he's got his camera and he's like, I'll cue you. I'll let you know. You could go. And so I do see you later. And he just kind of looked at me. He's like, all right. Like, what the heck was that? And I didn't feel like trying to explain it. It was, I think I said it trust me, it makes sense to some people that I know. That's all I said.
Remind me, what was the game that you called from the stands that was kind of your demo reel? Didn't you go to a playoff game or something and record yourself in the stands?
They weren't playoff games. It was Mets and Yankees games from the stands at Yankee Stadium and Shea Stadium. But yeah, a Yankees Red Sox game, which might as well have been a playoff game, and would have been 2001.
Okay.
So you were there. You were there for 5 hours and 20 minutes. 2001 Yankees Red Sox.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great game. Manny Ramirez hit a game-tying home run off of Mariano Rivera in the ninth, and then the Yankees won it on a Luis Sojo walk-off hit in the bottom of the ninth off Rod Beck, who was the Red Sox closer at the time.
I forgot he was with the Red Sox. So did you say see you later in that one? How long did it take for that to become your go-to call?
That's a great question. I did not. In terms of when I started saying it, you're far from the first person to ask me that, and I'm not really sure. I think I said it when I was in Binghamton, which was my last minor league stop. I recently found out that I did say it on the first ever Astros home run I ever called in the regular season, which was opening day 2013. Rick Ankiel hit a pinch hit home run against the Texas Rangers. And I only know that because I happened to be able to find a video clip of that, highlights of that game, and it had my home run call on it. But yeah, I don't know exactly when I started saying it. I do know that within my first 2 or 3 years with the Astros, I realized I kind of liked the way it sounded, and so I just started saying it more. But in terms of when I started saying it, I am not 100% sure.
I think the interesting thing with and because I try as much as I can to listen to the broadcast while I'm in the stadium, but what makes it hard for me is sometimes iHeart, or I'm not trying to blame iHeart, but sometimes you guys will be like 3 pitches behind the live action.
Right.
And so it's very disorienting to have like you calling a ball when it's 1 and 2 and they just punch somebody out. But on no doubters, obviously you can set up see you later pretty easily, right? Like off the bat, if you know the ball's gone, it's easy. How do you navigate the wall scrapers? How do you navigate the ones where, it's 360 to left field and it's a 362-foot shot that the left fielder is going to jump up and try to catch? How do you measure those? And how do you have see you later in the back of your mind as like the ball's going? Like how does that work with the ones that you don't know off the bat are going to be out?
So I've always felt like my philosophy when it comes to calling games is to react to what you see, because I feel like that's where you get the best calls. That is, and I think for me personally, I think that is when I sound the best. There are some broadcasters who may not so much script, but probably are a little more intentional about how they set things up than I am. But I think over the years, I've learned that I'm best when I'm more spontaneous and I'm just reacting to what I see. So yeah, unlike the wall scrapers, I don't know that I'm ever thinking see you later or kiss it goodbye or anything like that. I'm just reacting to the home run. So if it's a wall scraper, I'm calling it like a wall scraper because I want to convey to the listener, obviously, what the ball looks like. And, the outfielder going back to the fence and maybe jumping at the fence because he thinks he has a shot to catch it, or, getting back to the fence and then, looking up and realizing that it's long gone or whatever. So yeah, that's why, like I'm sure anybody who's listened to me enough notices that, yeah, generally when I say see you later, or kiss it goodbye, it's usually on a no doubter, on one that I have a little bit of time to kind of set up. But if it's one that just barely clears the fence and one that I'm not sure is going to go out until I see it land in the stands, those I'm generally just reacting to and say, it's something, it's gone or whatever, just something shorter and not as punchy. But I do like that about the way I call games, because I think it conveys the nature of, because not every home run's the same. So I don't think you should call every home run the exact same.
I have many more questions about your broadcasting style, and we'll ask those right after this message from our friends at Foul Territory.
Kratz, we picked you to talk about MeUndies, not just because they're ridiculously comfortable, but also because they are very festive. When the holiday season hits, you go on the website and there are just so many more designs to check out. And they just scream Eric Kratz getting little matching sets with everybody that he knows.
You know what? They're called MeUndies, not YouUndies. So you go in and you say, this one's for me. This set is for me. This is what is good for me. Not YouUndies, MeUndies. A lot of different ones to choose from.
I'm so confused, but what I do know is that you can knock out all of your holiday gifting needs today with MeUndies, and to get the exclusive holiday deals up to 50% off, MeUndies.com/foul. Enter promo code FOUL. That's MeUndies.com/FOUL. Promo code is FOUL for up to 50% off. Matching holiday prints with your person, you can't beat that.
They say, the saying goes that, opposites attract, right? That, the two opposites attract. That's kind of what is commonly known. And when I listen to you and Steve, Robert, I think that comes out, like I see it more there than really anywhere. You are a trained broadcaster that went to one of the finest journalism schools in the country. Everyone that went there will let you know that Syracuse is one of the finest journalism schools in the country, one of the finest broadcast schools in the country. Steve Sparks went to one of the finest universities in Texas, where he mastered the art of the knuckleball, but is not at all a trained broadcaster, but has certainly picked it up and is very, very good if you listen to you guys. But I always find it interesting when I listen to you guys about how two guys that go at the job in a very different way and in a very different way of calling games, Robert, I've sat in the booth with you guys in spring training at times, and when you guys have done innings, and like you're a guy that is every pitch you are on, every pitch. And Sparky will sometimes be telling a story and he'll miss a pitch and he can come back and get it in the next sentence and set it up and be fine. You guys have been together since 2013, right? Is that
Right.
correct? How has you guys' relationship evolved on air as two people that got to where you are in very different routes, that go about the job very differently, but at the end of the day, produce a very, very good broadcast that is easy to listen to, that's easy to follow, and that has a lot more than just the score of the game and what's going on?
Well, thank you. I mean, it's a good question. I think you're right in that, yes, Steve and I are opposites in a lot of ways. Like you mentioned, are very different backgrounds as to how we even got to where we got. But I think we're also similar and think about things in similar ways. We're in certain important things in similar ways. So I think for one, we're both just we're both just huge baseball fans. And, I tell people this all the time, and I know you know this, Chandler, having covered baseball for a while. I think a lot of fans might be surprised that a lot of Major League Baseball players aren't necessarily baseball fans. Like if they weren't playing Major League Baseball, they may not be paying attention to it, right? And that's no knock on them. I mean, that's just the way it is. And it doesn't mean you can't be a good ball player or any of that stuff. But Steve Sparks would be locked in on Major League Baseball and on every Major League season, even if he had never thrown a pitch professionally. He is a lifelong baseball fan. He grew up, watching games, listening to games, loving baseball. Ironically, also grew up a Mets fan, like I did, even though he grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Tom Seaver was his favorite player. But so I think, we're both big baseball fans, and I think we're also both just genuinely curious about the game and want to learn as much as we can about the game. And I think that was especially helpful in our early years when, the Astros were starting to really get kind of at the forefront of a lot of the analytics and the shifting and things like that, because neither one of us was closed off to that. Both of us were like, we want to know more about this. We want to learn why the Astros think this is going to work for them, and what all the different things are that the Astros are trying. Like we were fascinated by that. And I think we're just genuinely curious and genuinely fascinated by everything in the game, whether it's analytics or even just your bare bones and your more quote unquote old school baseball. So I think we're similar in those ways. I think another important way where we're similar is that neither one of us has a huge ego. Neither one of us wants to hog the spotlight. We both want to put together the best possible broadcast, and we both understand that for that to happen, both of us need to shine. And that's not going to happen if we're both stepping on each other's toes, and and there's these huge egos that like that, but neither one of us have those huge egos. So I think that helps. And I think also we're similar in that we take what we do seriously, but we don't take ourselves too seriously, which goes back to the ego thing too. But I think that helps. We can laugh with each other or at each other. We can joke around, but then when something happens in the game that requires play-by-player analysis, we're right on it. We can flip that switch. And I think that's important. And I think, our opposites help make the broadcast what it is. But I think the ways in which Steve and I are similar also help make the broadcast what it is.
I have a strange question here. You've called a lot of baseball games in your career. You started with the Astros in 2013. I famously watched and listened to every out of the 2013 Astros
Sorry
season.
about that. That was a rough one.
It was rough. I was in college. I was working at the Texas A&M student newspaper, so I was just there every night. I had nothing else going on. Two quick things. My roommate Danny and I, we listened to you quite a bit, and we had two running bits in our house that are directly from you. So I'm just passing this along to you, that you have been a part of our humor for the better part of a decade. And that was when I think you guys still do this, but Steve will read off the lineup, and here's who's pitching, here's where everybody is, and you kind of come in and you hit them with the same line every time, which is "Thank you, Steve," and you would say it the same way every time. And we started saying that if either one of us did anything in the house, if we picked up something, if we brought over a plate to "Thank you, Steve," we would just say that over and over again. And then anytime we left to get in the car to leave a door, we would shout out the door, "See you later!" So those were just so you know, that's been there. But here's the question I wanted to ask. You've seen a lot of baseball games. Could you give me a 60-second pitch of what is the ideal baseball game to call? Like over the course of the game, is it a 1-0 pitcher's duel? Is it 12-10? I know that any of those can be fun, but if you are going in and you're saying this is my only shot to call a baseball game, what does it look like?
Well, for me personally, pitching has always been my favorite part of the game. And for me as a fan and as a broadcaster, there is nothing better than a true pitcher's duel. And those are rare anyway, and they become even rarer because starters don't tend to go as deep into games. Because, I mean, a 1-0 game in which each team uses 5 pitchers just isn't quite the same. It's still exciting because every pitch, the score can change. But it's not quite the same as when you have, like, you think about that game the Astros had in Arlington earlier this year with Hunter Brown against Jacob deGrom. Like a game like that.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that was incredible. Those are just so much fun because, again, pitching is my favorite part of the game. Any close game late is always fun because, you don't have to build up any drama. You're just basically laying it out there and just giving context. It's not like a blowout game where, maybe you're trying to build a little bit of drama or something like that, or, things get off the rails. But yeah, when you have a game where both pitchers are on top of their game, and it's a close game, and, you're wondering who's going to get the big hit, who's going to score off of this guy, that is so much fun for me. And yeah, for sure, those are the most fun games for me to call a true pitcher's duel.
And you do not abide by, and you can't really. You don't abide by the no-hitter, quote unquote, jinx. Not
Get
jinx.
out of here. No.
You say it. Just like when I put on social media, if they're through 6, I get destroyed. I'm sure you get some backlash as well, but you have to. You don't, like, TK and Blum will do the thing where they don't say it, but it has it on the score bug that they're no hitter through 7. But if you tune into the game, they are showing you the line score after every half inning. If you have half your brain working, you can see that the Astros are throwing a no hitter. You don't have that luxury. So I've covered 7 since I started on the beat in 2018. How many of you?
That's how many there have been, because 2015 was my first one, the Mike Fiers no hitter. So yeah, there have been 7 Astros no hitters that I've called.
What is there one of those that sticks out? I mean, for me, it's not. I maybe I'm weird, but like the World Series no hitter for me, like maybe because it was a combined one. I don't really have visceral memories of that one. But is there one for you that sticks out just in terms of, the drama, the buildup, and kind of how you delivered it and everything?
I think the 2 that stand out the most, and it's also kind of crazy to me to be like, out of the 2 of the 7 no hitters, really? Are you kidding me?
I mean, it felt weird for me just to say that the no hitter I covered in the World Series. I was like, oh, well, they had to use 4 pitchers.
The World Series no hitter was cool because, one, it's the World Series, and also it was a day after the Astros just got blitzed by the Phillies.
Yes.
In Philadelphia, so that was cool. But yeah, the 2 that really, well, yeah, I'll say the 2 that stand out the most for me. And I know some Astros fans like to forget it happened and all that, but the Mike Fiers no hitter will always stand out for me because it was the first one I ever called. And
I was too.
that no hitter was so unique in that it wasn't, because most complete game no hitters, you're kind of thinking early on, wow, this guy's got really good stuff. He's really locked in. That was not true in the Mike Flowers no hitter. He had base runners in each of the first 3 innings. He wound up needing 130 pitches. So there was all this drama late in the game. Like, one, is he going to get the no hitter? 2, is he even going to be able to? Is he going to run out of pitches? As it turned out, AJ was going to just leave him out there, but we didn't know that. So that was incredible. And like the energy in the stadium that night, I'll never forget, because that was 2015, and it was right when people were starting to realize, hey, this Astros team's pretty good. And it was also against the Dodgers.
Mhm.
Now they weren't the rivals that they became, obviously, but I remember it was the first game Chase Utley played with the Dodgers. The Dodgers,
Yep.
It was right after the trade deadline, and the Dodgers had traded for Chase Utley from the Phillies. First game he played in. And that was also a big series because it was like, okay, this Astros team's been really good, but now the Dodgers are coming into town.
And
How are they going to do against them?
And I was the MLB.com intern for this game. I was covering the Dodgers clubhouse, and all they talked about was Utley before the game. And I'll also never forget. You may have been getting to this, but they were running out Greinke and Kershaw the next 2 nights. So the Astros, it was pretty much like the Astros are kind of up against it. Like, they got to win this one because I think Brett Anderson pitched against
Brett Anderson started that game. Yep.
So it's like, you got to beat Brett Anderson because you probably ain't beating Greinke or Kershaw in their primes the next 2 nights. And that was also something that sticks in my head.
Yeah, so that no-hitter will always stand out for me because, you never forget the first one that you called. The other one that really stands out for me was Justin Verlander's no-hitter in Toronto in 2019, for a few reasons. One, the first inning, he walked. He had a walk, Springer, if memory serves. And, he got through the inning, but wasn't particularly sharp. And I remember Sparks, he may have even said this on the air, but I remember we talked about it between innings. So Sparks noticed something with his mechanics, with where his arm slot was. And he's like, as soon as this inning ends, he's going to go into the video room because he wants to see where his arm slot was because he wants to be able to fix it. And I remember we watched him walk straight from the dugout, and the video room was right behind where the way it was set up at Rogers Center then. Video room was basically right behind where the dugouts were. And we could see from the booth him making a beeline to the tunnel. And we both knew that's what he was doing. And he said that after the game, that's what he was doing. And then he fixed it, and then he was just unhittable. So that was cool. The other things that were cool about that no-hitter for me were, it's Justin Verlander. It was already cool to call as many of his starts as I did for the Astros because this is somebody who, when the Astros got him, he was already a Hall of Famer. And he burnished his Hall of Fame resume with the Astros. And you could argue that he had some better years with the Astros and maybe even some of his best years with the Tigers. I wouldn't necessarily say that, but you could make that argument in some instances. But yeah, to see one of the best ever throw, his 3rd career no-hitter, that's pretty cool. And then you throw in the stuff with Abraham Toro wasn't supposed to play in the game. Yuli Gurriel hit 5 pitches the night before, got scratched. That's the only reason Toro was in the lineup. He had told his family, because he was from Montreal, yeah, you don't even need to be here for this game because I'm not even going to play. So they had because it was a Sunday day game. So he only had a handful of people there after having 30 people there for each of the first 2 games of that series. And I believe he played in both of those. So that was cool. And then he hits the home run and, gets an assist on the final out of that no-hitter. Just so many aspects of it were really neat for me. The other neat part of it for me was the Astros. So it was a Sunday getaway day. Astros traveled to Milwaukee after that. So the next day, this was back when I was still getting a player interview every day. And so I went down to the clubhouse in Milwaukee, to the Astros clubhouse in Milwaukee, hoping to get Verlander, knowing that it was not likely. Verlander generally wasn't in the clubhouse much when the media was in there. And I figured day after a no-hitter, he probably is really dodging the media. And he wasn't in there the entire hour clubhouse was open. But who was in there was Robinson Chirinos, who caught that no-hitter. And Robinson Chirinos is one of the nicest guys on the planet, and was a great interview. And so I went up to Robinson and asked him if I could interview him and talk about the no-hitter. And I think I still have that interview somewhere. It was a really great interview. He provided such great context. I remember him talking about a couple of mound visits because I asked him, hey, what did you talk about in these mound? And he told me, we talked about blah, 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 because this hitter had done this before. So we were, it was an incredible breakdown. And honestly, and this is no slight on Verlander, it was a better interview than I would have gotten with Verlander. So it was almost better that Robinson Chirinos was the guy that I talked to the day after that no-hitter.
You talked about Sparks being a lifelong baseball guy, and that's what makes him a good broadcaster. Is there a name or a handful of names of players that you've covered or gotten to know over the last 10 years that you think, oh, that guy would be a great broadcaster? He's he speaks really well. He loves the game, would be fun, quick on his feet. Anybody stick out to you?
That's a great question. It's not something I think about a ton. I think about it more when I see guys get into broadcasting after their career. Like when I found out Tony Kemp was going to be doing some A's pre and post, I'm like, yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
Colin McHugh was someone that I did think about that. And I may have even mentioned something. I know Sparks did. I know Sparks said something to him. And I know he was doing some pre and post on Braves TV for a little while. But Colin was actually in Atlanta when we were there, and he was out before one of the games that we were there this past season, and he was doing he kind of figured out he wanted to do more player development stuff and be more around players rather than in broadcasting, at least for the time being. But Colin McHugh is someone who stands out, and he's another guy who's a huge baseball fan. I remember having conversations with him about him growing up in Atlanta and listening to, Skip Carey and, those legendary Braves broadcasters, Pete Van Wieren, who were on TBS all those years. So he was always someone that I thought would be really good in broadcasting if he ever decided to pursue it.
A fellow podcaster, Colin McHugh.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Josh Reddick of Crush City Territory.
Of course, would be phenomenal.
Josh is great. I've done some radio with Josh. He's fantastic. Yeah.
No, he's good. He's good. I think he's great as a color guy on the radio. I think, again, this may not be something that Astros fans, depending on the time of year, want to hear, but Jeff Bagwell is very, very good. When you get him in a color analyst role, I think the thing about listening to Baggy on the radio, that is his baseball knowledge is just, he's a Hall of Famer and he's one of the best players to ever play. He knows baseball. But he's telegraphing stolen bases 2 pitches before they happen. He's sequencing pitches. It's incredible to listen to him on the radio and the way he can do that. And you maybe don't get that feel on television just because it's a different. And I know that's where most people see him do a lot of his work is on television. You don't really get it as much there as you do on radio when, you're listening and maybe not watching the game, but he is excellent at that. And
yeah, I agree. And I really enjoy working with Baggy. And no, you're right. Not only his knowledge of the game, but his ability to convey it in a simple way to understand it. He is elite at it. And especially when he talks about base running. And, he always had a reputation as a player as being a great base runner. He'll be the first one to tell you he's not fast, but he's, still 30-30 guy twice because he understood, reading pitchers, and he was looking for every edge that he could get as a player on the base paths. As a matter of fact, he did a series with me. This was a couple of years ago, maybe against the Guardians, and when Terry Francona was still managing Cleveland. So yeah, it must've been 3 years ago. And I'm in Tito's office because a lot of times I'll go down and listen to the other team's manager. And Terry Francona does his in his office. So I was there listening to him, and, I didn't know, we're not buddies, but I know him and he knows who I am, whatever. And we were just kind of chatting as his media session was breaking up, and Jeff Bagwell's name came up for some reason. And I mentioned to Tito, I said, he's working this series with me on the radio. And he's like, tell him I said hello. He doesn't know me very well, but tell him I said hello. And he goes, he is the best base runner I have ever seen. He threw in another word in there, but he's like, he is the best base runner I've ever seen. And make sure you tell him I said that. And I did. But I mean, that just kind of gives you an idea of just kind of the reputation Jeff Bagwell had as a player, not just in Houston, but even outside of Houston.
Well, Robert, we'll get certainly some time to listen to Baggy, to listen to you, to listen to Steve, listen to everybody starting in West Palm Beach in February. But this was fun. I appreciate you taking some time. I told you we'd keep you around 20 to 30 minutes, and we just hit the hour mark. So this was great. Appreciate you indulging us in this wide-ranging conversation. We'll have you back at some point, maybe in spring training, maybe before the season gets going. As I said, guys, the winter meetings will ramp up. I leave for the winter meetings in 7 days on Sunday. So this week, maybe some action should start percolating a little bit, but certainly next week is when the offseason will really kick into its highest gear in Orlando, Florida for the winter meetings. Until then, you can follow me on X at Chandler_Rome. You can follow Tyler at Tyler C. Stafford. Robert, you're at RA Ford 3. Is that correct?
Yep, on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram.
RA Ford 3 for Robert. And as always, guys, you can rate and review us on Apple and Spotify. Please subscribe on either of those platforms. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, so you can get notified anytime we post a new episode. Again, Robert, this was great. We appreciate you taking some time on a Sunday night to indulge us, and we will talk to you guys soon. See you later.
See you later.
Hey, that's my line.